Hey guys, Scott here. Today I want to talk about the high MMR paradox. Before I go into it, I need to make it clear this is meant to find flaws in logic for people that believe that MMR works, and the reason they're losing is because they're high MMR. You'll see this on Twitter, Reddit, forums, everywhere. It's a very, very common sentiment. People hate high MMR games. Ignoring the fact that you can't even tell if you're high MMR, let's just assume that they do know that and tackle that. But this has to be taken from the point of view of someone that believes that MMR works. Because obviously, if you don't believe MMR works, which is kind of in the boat that I'm in right now, then you're not going to attribute losses to being high MMR because you just admitted the system doesn't work, so high MMR is meaningless, right? So that's where I'm at. Maybe at one point the system worked, but I feel for the past 6 months or whatever, I have noticed no difference from MMR and the old ranked matchmaking. It's basically the exact same. Whether it's because they changed something, they lowered the bounds, they changed the soft caps, or queue times are too long, so the range is extended. Whatever the reason, it doesn't matter. My personal anecdotal experience has been that it is no different. So that's just where I stand, but not super relevant because we're tackling a different side of this argument where people believe it does work, and the reason they're losing is because they're high MMR. So in a nutshell, I just tweeted about this because I wanted to have people offer me counterpoints, and they did, and that's what I'm going to be addressing in most of this video, counterpoints to the argument that I'm trying to put out here. So what I said was MMR has made high MMR games too hard to win. That implies that you are losing more often than you win. Thus, you can't have high MMR. That's the paradox right there. If you are winning more than you're losing, it can't be as hard as you're saying it is because you're winning more often than you're losing. That's it. Very simple. It's a very simple line of logic, and I wanted people to try to poke holes in that because I thought it was pretty flawed to have that. How can you be high MMR if you're losing? It doesn't make any sense. There's also another topic I wanted to tag onto that, which was probably the most common counterpoint I hear. It's that people will bring up like Otz's experiment, for example. They say, okay, fine. If you do play super sweaty, tunnely campy, big dick bag mode, you can actually win even at high MMR. And that's what a lot of these experiments went out to prove. And they did prove that. You can, regardless of whoever you're going against at high MMR, assuming you know you're there, you can win if you play like a dick. And so people say, okay, well, I don't really want to do that. So if we just make the game easier for killer overall, people will tone it back a bit. And then they won't have to do that. They won't feel pressured into having to play like an asshole. And that'll make things better. The counterpoint there is no, it won't. It'll make a few people probably more relaxed, but people that want to play sweaty are still going to play sweaty and find that the game is even easier now that the game, gens take 100 seconds or whatever your suggestion would be, or Survive with Friends is nerfed or whatever. People that play sweaty are just going to benefit even more from doing that. Just making the game easier for everybody, it doesn't change anything. People are still going to play sweaty, except now it's even easier for them to win. Then people will get pissed off. Survivors will get mad. Solo queue survivors, like, oh my God, gens are taking longer now. People are still playing sweaty. Nothing's changed. Newsflash, people have been playing sweaty for 6 years straight. I think MMR is one of the biggest placebos I've ever seen in my entire life. It is the new scapegoat. Ever since high MMR, everyone's playing so sweaty. They've always done that. Go before MMR existed to forums or Reddit or Twitter or anything, and just put in search term Facecamp or Tunnel or Slug or GenRush. People have been bitching the entire time this game has existed. I don't think it's made it worse. I think it's what people just throw on the fire now. Oh, it's MMR's cause. No, people just do this. People just like playing sweaty. They like winning. And for whatever reason, that's what the reality of the game is. So I never really thought that was a good counterpoint, but I want to go over individual responses now, and we'll just go from there. This first response, you're ignoring the topic about how you win. You can definitely 2K or more if they fuck up every game at high MMR by playing super sweaty camp, and by doing that, you will stay in high MMR. As we've seen with people doing Otz's experiment, that's pretty much true. If you play like a dick, you can win more often than you lose at a pretty consistent amount. Now, you're not playing in a tournament where that might not be true, but at a standard high MMR level, if you play like a dick, it's significantly easier to win. And then he goes on to say, the games are too hard to win by playing the game nicely and as intended by the devs. And that's the part I want to pick apart about this. The games are too hard to win by playing the game nicely. See, I feel like you can't have it both ways. You can't want to play the game nice in a calm manner, but then also have complained that the games are too hard. If the games are too hard, you need to try harder to win. It's just it doesn't make any sense to me. If you play, like, for example, I play nice, or at least I try to, and, it will cost me some games. I actually might lose a game or two because I do play, or I try to play in as nice a way as possible. It's not to say I never slog or tunnel or camp or something like that. It does happen occasionally, but I try to play nice, and it does cost me games sometimes. But the thing is, I don't complain about the game at that point. I know it was probably within my power to win, and I probably could have, so I don't blame the game. I just chose to play nice. You can't choose to play nice and then complain that the game is too hard to win when you're handicapping yourself by playing nice. It doesn't make any sense. And the follow-up statement here is something that a lot of people repeat, and I don't understand this either. Play the game nicely as intended by the devs. Where did that come from? Where is the proof that the devs said you shouldn't tunnel, slug, or camp? None of these things are bannable offenses, and in fact, there are several things in the game that indicate that these are base game mechanics. There are perks, a lot of perks, that deal with every toxic thing either side can do. If we're talking about slugging, there's knockout to empower slugging. There's unbreakable to counter slugging. Tunneling someone out of the match, super strong. Decisive strike, meant to counter that. Bar time, meant to counter that. Camping is, there are perks like deadlock that synergize really well with camping. And there are perks like kinship or camaraderie that are meant to combat camping. Like, they wouldn't have all of these perks and things in the game if it wasn't a base part of the game. That's actually just how the game is. Nowhere have the devs ever said that you shouldn't be doing this. They actually have perks and stuff that help with it, indicating, yeah, that's a base game mechanic. Now, the argument is, okay, well, should that be? And the answer is, of course, no. Of course, those things shouldn't be base mechanics, because that would make the game more exciting and more fun for everybody. But that's not what the game is. It's been 6 years. That's not going to change, guys. People call me pessimistic for having this attitude. I'm a realist. I'm using the past 6 years of this game to show that if you made the game easier by, extending gen times or whatever your suggestion is for making the game easier for killer, if you do that, people will still camp and tunnel and do all this stuff because they are base mechanics of the game. Short of a complete rework where you just remove hook timers entirely or some crazy change like that, this will always be in the game. It was built with this in mind. There are perks dedicated to this. Look at Insidious. What is the point of Insidious? You know what the point of Insidious is. There are things in this game that very clearly indicate that these are things meant by the devs. And whether or not they should be is unfortunately irrelevant. We can suggest for years and years and years and years and years and years to remove this stuff, but it's not removed. It's not going to be removed. So stop living in a world where you think that's not the reality of the game. That's unfortunately the reality of the game. So if you want to play nice and not have to do that stuff, that's great. You have to accept you're going to lose a bit more. If you do really want to try to win all of your matches, and you probably can, you will have to play a bit sweatier. That's just how the game is. If you're sort of attacking the argument from any other side, you're envisioning a version of the game that simply does not exist, which I think is a pretty lousy argument. You can be idealistic all you want, but that's unfortunately not how the game is, no matter how much we suggest it shouldn't be like that. That's just how it is. All right, next from Kelisay, this paradox can be solved by adding the word consistently at the end of the sentence. So that would make my sentence, MMR has made high MMR games too hard to win consistently. To which point I say, that's not an argument at all. If the MMR system works, which I don't think it does, but people that have this mindset, they think it does work. If it's working, and you shouldn't be winning consistently. In fact, if you are winning consistently, that means it's not working. And go look at most streamers playing this game; they're winning more often than they don't, which that's right there indicates that it's not actually working. So that's sort of a faulty line of logic. Theoretically, with a perfect MMR system, you should be winning half of your games, which means let's just say you should be getting 2 kills and another hook or 2. Let's use the old pip system, honestly, because I thought that was better. You should be getting around that, which on average is sort of what it's ending up to be. So I don't think there's any really credence to this, because you shouldn't be winning consistently with a functional MMR system. So it doesn't make any sense. All right, next, I think Ott said on his tweets that it's possible to get 2Ks and not lose MMR, so you wouldn't be stuck in MMR hell. I think that the problem is not just winning or losing, it's just that 2 out of 3 games are unfun no matter the result. And this sort of goes back to what I just said earlier. That can be true. You can feel like that, if you're forced to play in this sweaty way, that the games are, less fun. Thing is, you're not forced to do anything. You can play as nice or as mean as you want. You might lose more if you're nice, but again, like I said, you can't have it both ways. You can't not try to win and then be mad that you didn't win. It doesn't make any sense. But I see the sentiment a lot, and I actually sympathize with it. 2 out of 3 games are just unfun no matter the result. And really what it boils down to is not MMR. It's just, it may be a hard pill to swallow, but you're just bored of Dead by Daylight. People that have been playing this game for a long time, they're just bored of the game in general. No perfect balance or system or anything is going to change the fact that they're just bored of the game. And that's okay, but it really has nothing to do with MMR, at least in my opinion. The game is kind of stale right now. I agree completely, but I think that's sort of a separate argument. It doesn't really involve MMR at all. The first part that he mentioned, though, it's possible to get 2Ks and not lose MMR, so you'd be stuck in MMR hell. Even then, not really a counter argument, because if that's true, if you could just basically just get 1 or 2 kills and still not lose MMR, that sort of implies that everyone is high MMR, which I actually think is the case. Based on the original data mining I saw, there were a lot more killers at high MMR than Survivor, because I think genuinely it's pretty darn easy to get to that 1900 soft cap of MMR. You don't really have to do much. So if this side of the argument is taken at face value, then it still means that it doesn't make any sense, because if everyone's high MMR, then no one's high MMR. So that doesn't really address it either. The next one says, because people want to act like they weren't sweating before MMR was introduced. And I just thought this was funny because, yeah, people are acting like that. They act like ever since MMR, things have gotten so much sweatier. And I think I've even said that at some point, but that was like when they first implemented it. I thought games felt sweatier, but then as I played more and more and more for months and months, I started realizing, actually, no, there's no difference. A couple of days after MMR came out, I just got a couple of unlucky games where people were really good and I probably didn't play that great. But nowadays, again, for whatever variables there is, even if it's something as simple as like, the match bounds being made too wide, the fact is it's so random at this point that it doesn't really matter. And people just keep saying that like no one played sweaty before MMR. Like, of course they did. I feel like these people didn't go on Reddit or forums or watch streams or go on Twitter. People were bitching since day one that people are playing sweaty nonstop. That will never change. The game could be perfectly balanced. It could have an MMR system. It could not have an MMR system. People will just keep saying the same stuff. That will never, ever change. All right, the next one is, if you 4K and you were stressed the whole game, that is not a win for me, at least. MMR took the fun out of the game. That's where the win versus loss lies for most killer, and not necessarily how many people get out. So it's more of addressing the fun aspect of it. Again, I think this is an entirely community-made problem. MMR is meaningless, so people just decided to play sweatier if they are. Again, I haven't really noticed much of a difference, but people are saying this, so I'm just going to ride with that wave and assume that that is true for their experiences. I'm not going to diminish other people's experiences. So if you 4K and stress the whole game, it's not a win for you. Thing is, though, if you're playing killer, you're going to be stressed probably. It's pretty hard to not be stressed as killer. Now, I don't really get stressed anymore, but it's because I've just played killer so much that I just don't care anymore. Like, it's whatever. But for a standard player playing this game, if you're playing the side of the 1 versus the 4, no matter how balanced the game is, no matter how balanced the match is with matchmaking, you're still going to be more stressed than the survivors. You still have way more relying just solely on you than the other people. So if the role of killer is stressing you out, MMR doesn't really affect that much. You're still going to be more stressed no matter what you do. And if you find that not fun, I think that just means you don't like killer. It's a lot harder, I think, to juggle all the things that are going on in an individual killer match on your mental psyche. I'm not saying it's harder necessarily to play, although I think it is. I think it's harder on your, emotional state, stress-wise, to play killer because there's just simply more relying on you. And I don't think MMR took fun out of the game. I think people's belief in MMR took fun out of the game. And still, that's assuming I've noticed a difference, which I'll reiterate again, in the past, 4 or 5 months, I've noticed no difference from this in the old system. But for people that believe that the games have gotten sweatier and stuff like that, which again, I'm not discrediting, your experiences are just as valid as mine. I don't think that's really MMR's fault. I think that is the community deciding that MMR meant anything's fault. Now, obviously, MMR is an inciting catalyst to the community response to it. But like I said, I haven't really noticed a change on there. But I do understand the game seems less fun when you're stressing a lot more, which basically means you're trying really hard to win, right? But at the same side, couldn't it also be said that if you're not stressed at all playing killer, if you're just having super easy chill times, doesn't that mean the survivors are having a really bad time? I don't think there's any scenario where both sides are just like, hey, let's just jive and do whatever the hell we want. Let's just have fun. That pretty much never happens. MMR be damned. That doesn't happen. If one side is stressed, the other side probably not stressed. That's just how asymmetrical games go. And I don't think MMR really had a huge impact on that, although I will say people tend to use that as a scapegoat quite a bit. Finally, the biggest point here is the true MMR paradox is why it ended up in a game like fucking Dead by Daylight. That's a good one. I got nothing for that one. All right. Well, This was entertaining. I really enjoyed talking with you guys about this stuff. Again, I really want to make it clear I'm not like saying that you're not encountering harder games or anything like that. I'm just offering my anecdotal experience with the system, and I really have not noticed a difference for several months now. I noticed that it's pretty much the exact same as the old system. But again, that does not imply you're not seeing a problem. I just want to go over this sort of flaw in logic where people think that they're losing because they're high MMR, but they can't be high MMR if they're losing. And if they're winning more often than they are losing, well, that means it's not as bad as you think it is, because technically you're supposed to be winning half your games. So that's basically it. I just wanted to go over that. Thought it was an interesting talking point. That's it, guys. Take it easy. Have a good one.